In times of need, some people are able to think outside of the box to make the situation better. Edward Obadiah Sweat can certainly relate to that, as he shared a clever tip on Facebook to the people of Florida in 2017. However, the trick came about after a major event in Houston, Texas. A resident of Barker, Texas, Sweat once lived in Jacksonville, Florida, before his retirement. At that time, he worked at the local police station as a master patrolman. Given his previous connection to the state, the former officer wanted to share some advice with the people living there. In September 2017, just 1 month before Sweat's Facebook post, a massive natural disaster had thrown the state of Texas into turmoil. The previous hurricane to hit American shores had come back in 2005, when Hurricane Wilma had devastated Florida. However, the arrival of Hurricane Harvey would break that 12-year record. Starting out as a tropical storm, Hurricane Harvey affected some areas of the Caribbean before it began to weaken on August 19, 2017. At that point, meteorologists had downgraded the storm to a tropical wave, appearing outside of Colombia. Just a few days on from that, though, the situation completely changed. After developing into a tropical storm again on August 24, experts then upgraded Harvey's status to a hurricane a few hours later. They classified the storm as a Category 4, with the people of Texas preparing themselves for the dangerous conditions. On that note, the hurricane made landfall on the evening of August 25. Over the next few days, Hurricane Harvey threw Texas into disarray, with winds initially reaching speeds of 130 miles per hour. In addition to that, the storm also dumped close to 30 trillion gallons of rainfall in the Lone Star State by the end of that first weekend. Unfortunately for the local residents, though, it didn't end there. While Harvey's status reverted back to a tropical storm on August 26, winds were still hitting around 40 miles per hour at that point. With large parts of the state flooded, the storm then reached Port Arthur, Texas, some 4 days later. Alongside that, Cameron, Louisiana, was also affected by the conditions. Following a hellish week or so, Hurricane Harvey finally dispersed in early September 2017, leaving behind an incredible amount of damage. Indeed, the storm caused around $125 billion worth of destruction over those few days. Only Hurricane Katrina back in 2005 could match those numbers, which made it the joint most expensive hurricane on record in America. Meanwhile, just a few days before Harvey's dissipation, the mayor of Houston spoke about the city's response to the storm. During an interview with National Public Radio, NPR, Sylvester Turner was asked if the local residents were ready for the hurricane, which drew a detailed reply. "Oh, absolutely, we were prepared," he said. "We prepared leading up to Hurricane Harvey," Turner continued. "We encouraged all Houstonians to go and make sure that they have enough food, enough water, medication, supplies for a 4 or 5 day event. And by and large, that's exactly what they did. So I'm very proud of Houstonians," Turner added. This was a storm that really no one knew which direction it was going to take. But the best thing was for people to hunker down and then be prepared. From there, the mayor was then questioned about what would be done in Harvey's aftermath, drawing another detailed response. Unsurprisingly, some aspects of Turner's plan took priority over others. "Well, the plan is, number 1, to provide shelter for those who are no longer able to stay in their homes," he told NPR. "And we're doing that. It's to make sure that we rescue whatever individuals who are in homes or in apartments who have been significantly inconvenienced." At that point, Turner mentioned the next stage of the city's agenda. "Thirdly is to make sure that we provide a suitable transition," the mayor added. "So that once this storm passes, we can put people in the best position to restart their lives and move forward in the city." However, a few days after that interview, the governor of Texas then lifted the lid on the scale of Hurricane Harvey's damage. While the storm had dissipated at that point, the subsequent flooding of areas such as Beaumont, Texas, were still a major issue. So with that in mind, Greg Abbott laid bare the challenges ahead. As the waters recede in Houston, of course they're still rising over in Beaumont, Abbott told Good Morning America in September 2017. "So we are having to, first of all, deal with the aftermath of the receding waters in Houston, while also dealing with the emergency of rescuing people in the Beaumont, Texas, area." On that note, Abbott didn't mince his words when discussing what was going to happen next. "This is going to be a massive, massive cleanup process," he added. "People need to understand this is not going to be a short-term project. This is going to be a multi-year project for Texas to be able to dig out of this catastrophe." As the people of Texas attempted to put their lives back together again, another storm was brewing over the Atlantic Ocean. Indeed, a tropical wave appeared on weather maps on August 30, 2017, but that status quickly changed. Within 24 hours, the tropical wave had developed into a hurricane. Over the next few days, Hurricane Irma's ferocity continued to grow, with winds reaching up to 145 miles per hour. Both Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands were put on alert at that stage, as the massive storm started to close in. By September 5, Irma had been classified as a Category 5 hurricane. At that point, Hurricane Irma's winds were reaching around 175 miles per hour. Incredibly, though, the conditions only got worse when the storm hit Puerto Rico on the evening of September 6. The local residents faced downwinds of 185 miles per hour over that period, with the hurricane showing no signs of stopping. The following morning, the residents of Florida were then put on red alert, as Hurricane Irma continued on its path of destruction. More than 24 hours later, the storm had also made landfall in Cuba, leading to the next big development. Experts downgraded Irma to a Category 4 hurricane during this time. However, while the winds had significantly decreased, they were still reaching speeds of around 125 miles per hour. At that point, the people of Florida were readying themselves, with the storm set to hit them on the morning of September 10. After 12 years without a hurricane, America was about to face its second in as many weeks. In the lead-up to Hurricane Irma's arrival in Florida, several residents looked to fortify their homes against the coming conditions. On that note, people invested in sandbags, using them to stop any water from seeping through gaps in their doors. Despite those efforts, though, one person in particular didn't believe that would be enough. Craig Fugate, formerly of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, pointed out the flaws. "This is a lot of work, a lot of time and a lot of prep," he told the Tampa Bay Times in September 2017. "Just putting a few sandbags in front of your door, if you're talking more than just a couple inches of water, it isn't going to stop it." With that in mind, Fugate then offered residents some advice while also maintaining his previous stance on sandbags. "To do it most effectively, you've got to completely seal off all the ways water can get into your foundation and through the ground floor," he continued. "What the average person needs is far beyond the number of bags you're going to get from most of these centers. While those living in concrete houses had a better chance of defending themselves, Fugate had some bad news for people in wooden homes. With wood, sandbags are not going to help much," he told the newspaper. "The minute that water gets over, around or through those sandbags, then those sandbags aren't going to fix much." From there, Fugate then offered some final words of wisdom to Floridians ahead of Hurricane Irma's arrival. He said, "Stack stuff as high as you can, take your papers, pack your bags and be ready to evacuate." Then he added, "If you need to evacuate, don't waste your time putting out sandbags." Despite those words, a former Florida resident gave some alternate advice to locals in that state. Indeed, Sweat took to the social media website after Hurricane Harvey had turned Texas upside down, looking to offer a bit of help. However, few could have predicted just how unique his trick would be. "Paint cans or 5-gallon buckets can support and elevate your furniture if you are going to get water in your house," Sweat continued. "We're close to bed. Nothing looks worse than seeing people on the news in waterlogged nightgowns and boxer shorts. Plus, it is helpful slogging through the water at night." After that, Sweat then made a serious point regarding the plugs and sockets around people's homes. "If you get water up to your electrical outlets or you evacuate, trip the main breaker," he wrote. "A volunteer was electrocuted and died here walking in knee-deep water due to the power being on at a house he was going to check on." From there, Sweat added some last pieces of advice before finishing his informative social media post. "Wear hard-soled shoes and gloves if you wade in water," the Barker resident wrote on Facebook. Then he added, "Use duct tape to seal your garage door to the floor to prevent water intrusion." Sweat also wrote in his post, "Everyone should have an ID, a whistle and a flashlight on them once the rain comes." have a queen or king-sized white flat sheet to signal for help from boats and helicopters. And map out a couple of escape paths. Leave your house before these become flooded. Sweat's Facebook post provoked a big response on social media, as online users thanked him for his hurricane tips. The message subsequently earned more than 170,000 shares at one point, alongside a decent amount of appreciative comments. However, one of those stood out above all the rest in the comments section. "I'm beginning to be concerned," wrote the Facebook user when talking about Hurricane Irma. "We live in Murray Hill in an area that doesn't drain very well at all. The plastic bag idea is a good one. Thanks, pal. Hoping and praying. Wish us luck." As for the storm itself, plenty of damage was caused following its landfall on September 10, 2017. Over the next 24 hours, Hurricane Irma moved across the Florida Keys before hitting Tampa, Florida, on September 11. At that point, the hurricane had been reclassified as a Category 1 storm, but it didn't stop moving. As a result of that, the Sunshine State wasn't the only one to be affected by Irma. Indeed, while Irma was reclassified again as a tropical storm, both South Carolina and Georgia faced down some very difficult conditions. Following a nightmarish few days, though, the hurricane finally dispersed on September 13, 2017, bringing the chaos to an end. But the cleanup had only just begun. Hurricane Irma caused over $50 billion worth of damage, with only 4 other storms on record doing worse in America. In addition to that, more than 130 people lost their lives during that period. Due to its incredibly strong winds, Irma proved to be one of the most powerful hurricanes in living memory. Meanwhile, as local residents attempted to get their lives back on track, the governor of Florida spoke about the hard work ahead. The Florida Keys in particular suffered plenty of damage from the hurricane, with Rick Scott focusing his attention there. "I know for our entire state, but especially the Keys, it's going to be a long road," he told the press in September 2017. Meanwhile, as local residents attempted to get their lives back on track, the governor of Florida spoke about the hard work ahead. The Florida Keys in particular suffered plenty of damage from the hurricane, with Rick Scott focusing his attention there. "I know for our entire state, but especially the Keys, it's going to be a long road," he told the press in September 2017. As America continued to recover from the 2 storms in 2017, another hurricane emerged soon after. Hurricane Maria swept through several countries on the Atlantic Ocean, before affecting North Carolina at the back end of September. For those waiting out the storm in the Old North State, Edward Obadiah Sweat's tips might have proved useful.